Longing and Belonging, from the book At Home and Abroad, 20 Contemporary Filipino Artists. Today's topics includes the paradoxical presence, Filipino immigrants and exiles, artists, and the migrant aesthetic. Filipinos aspire to a more powerful voice, persona, political weight in the US as their numbers continue to grow. And in 1984, Filipinos became the largest immigrant population in California. However, despite this, there is an immeasurable sense of non-being that haunts Filipinos in America and Americans in Filipino history. Filipino writers have questioned America's presence in their own country, as well as their people's infatuation with it. Second and third generation Filipinos perambulate between a culture that alienates them and a culture they know nothing about or are ashamed of. Because of this, the migration of Filipinos to America lands them in familiar territory. Filipinos actively seek employment abroad due to the lack of opportunities in the Philippines. First, Philippine-American colonial relations drawing workers, students, and idealists away from the Philippines. Males were recruited for agricultural and cannery work in Hawaii, Washington, and Alaska. Second occurred after World War II. The third happened after the liberalization of the U.S. immigration law. And lastly, in the early 1980s, the global economy increased demand for skilled and semi-skilled Filipinos in many parts of Middle East, Asia, and Western Europe. The illegal trafficking of women also led to a large proliferation of Filipinos in illegal sex industries. In Japan, they are called Japayuki, and in Brunei, they are called Bruneiuki. OFWs occupy ambiguous positions whose labor takes place somewhere else but whose effects command, through money, a place in the nation-state. Thus, they are called the exilic incarnations of contemporary patriotism. Some OCWs are forever consigned to positions of relative subservience and marginality by the terms of their contract and by virtue of their exclusion from the linguistic and religious communities of their employers. Because of this, OCWs could only exist as sheer labor power. Filipino domestic helpers are also one of the most popular subjects of Filipino movies until today. Balikbayan, coined from the term balik, which means to return, and bayan, or town or nation, means return to town and nation. Journalist Conrado de Quiros compares them to Thomasites, and with their arrival, Filipinos started to think of themselves as Americans. Their ambitions lie in setting themselves apart from the rest of the natives rather than affiliating with them. It is said that the shamelessness of Balikbayan turns out to be the tragedy of Filipinos caught up in colonial delusions. The Ilustrado embodies the search for increased exposure to Western culture. They are Eurocentric, as seen by Juan Luna and Felix Hidalgo. In colonial bilingualism, or linguistic drama, there is a struggle between the colonizers and the colonized culture. The visual language of expatriate Filipino artists reflects dissonance born of alienation and assimilation, of longing and belonging. The following are examples of expatriate artists. Gaston Damag is from Banawe, Ifugao, and he currently resides in Paris. He created a literal dissection of gods through sculptures incorporating fake African idols passed off as bululs. "It is a mocking piece. It's about being fooled," he said. Manuel Ocampo is from Quezon City and now is settled in Los Angeles. His work is scattered with dark humor similar to that which lies at the heart of the Filipino psyche. Paintings reflect both catechism and cataclysm. He was called the angriest artist, and also he said, "Artists are glorified sign painters." Lani Maestro was born in Manila and now resides in Canada. She produced installation-based work responding to the reality of political oppression in the Philippines, such as stories of torture, disappearances, imprisonments, and feelings of separation, loss, and alienation. Through her art, she established a sense of continuity, of connection with the people of her country and others. Paul Pfeiffer was born in Minnesota and studied art in San Francisco and New York. His work mirrors themes of colonialism in the Philippines, and his work consists of blueprints, scale models, and installations constructed in a visual language derived from the canons of Western architecture. Alan Valencia emigrated to California after the death of his father. He explores and attempts to express the emotional, psychological aspects and effects of dislocation, loss, mourning, pain, hope and faith, rebirth and renewal, and childhood memory. Sometimes, writings and confessions are incorporated into his works, secreted into compartments which cannot be viewed without destroying the work. Lordy Rodriguez from Pampanga distorts science back into art and creates maps without referencing land surveys or satellite photographs. He plays on geographical boundaries, conditions of existence, and state of minds. Pasita Abad from Batanes works in trapunto, a form of collage tapestry. She is drawn to this medium due to accessibility and lack of pretense. She incorporates indigenous and found materials collected during her travels. Alwin Emilio and Juliet Lea. They both create collage and installations in Western Australia. They make visual images with forceful impact of ideas and a kind of cerebral repassage. One of their main themes being the clashing of their own cultures. For Stephanie Sihuko, her work examines the ways in which we frame science and history by examining methods of display, arrangement, and object narrative, and intersects them with materials quoted as domestic and mundane. The works of these artists can be categorized under the migrant aesthetic, and according to Paul Carter, this includes concepts of nostalgia and the problematic return, the paradox of return that you can never go back.